The Baltic Sea, 40 nautical miles southwest of Gotland. Water depth, 90 meters. Bottom composition, hard glacial rock and sand, the kind that bounces sound in every direction at once. And somewhere down there, a Kilo-class diesel-electric submarine has shut off its engines, retracted its snorkel, and is now drifting on battery power toward the junction point of a natural gas pipeline that feeds 7 European nations. This is a hypothetical scenario built entirely from real systems and real capabilities, for education and analysis. Nothing here is classified. Everything here is documented. And by the end, you'll understand exactly why the hunter almost always wins the second half of this hunt. The Kilo is not making a sound. That's not a figure of speech. At dead slow battery speed, this boat generates acoustic signatures that fall below the ambient noise floor of a busy shipping lane. Ferry traffic from Stockholm to Helsinki, cargo vessels grinding past Bornholm, commercial trawlers dragging nets, all of it layers into a wall of noise that passive sonar has to fight through. For a few minutes, maybe longer, the Kilo owns the water. It knows that. Its commander knows that. And right now, the boat is 4 kilometers from a pipeline junction that NATO has flagged as critical infrastructure. The kind of target where a shaped charge in the right place doesn't just cut gas flow. It triggers an insurance crisis, a diplomatic crisis, and 3 months of emergency energy rerouting across the continent. Here's what the submarine commander does not know yet. A P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft departed Keflavik 40 minutes ago, and it is not searching blindly. It has a track. It has a datum. And it is about to demonstrate why shallow, noisy, hard-bottomed water, the environment the Kilo chose as cover, is actually one of the worst places on Earth to hide from a sensor suite designed specifically for this problem. To understand what happens next, you need to understand the acoustic environment the Kilo is exploiting. In deep ocean, think Atlantic midwater, 500 meters down, sound bends and travels in predictable channels. A passive sonar array can pick up a submarine across dozens of kilometers. But the Baltic is not the Atlantic. At 90 meters, sound bouncing off a hard rocky bottom creates a reverberant chaos, overlapping echoes that mask any individual tonal signature. Think of trying to identify one specific voice in a stadium crowd during a goal celebration. The Kilo's engineers designed this submarine to exploit exactly that environment. At battery cruise, its acoustic signature is below 3 knots ambient flow noise. For a diesel-electric boat, it's genuinely one of the quietest submarines ever put to sea. That is its entire strategic bet, that the noise floor is high enough and the bottom hard enough that passive acoustics will find nothing before the pipeline junction is within reach. The bet is not crazy. It has worked before, in exercises, in Cold War patrols, in incidents that never made official press releases. The Kilo's passive sonar crew is listening to their own sensors, tracking surface traffic, building a mental map of where the gaps are. The commander sets a course at 2 knots. At 4 hours of battery endurance, that gives him roughly 8 nautical miles before he has to either snorkel and expose himself, or abort. The math feels comfortable. He has time. What he is not accounting for is that a P-8A Poseidon does not need to hear him. The P-8A, a Boeing 737 airframe rebuilt from the fuselage out for anti-submarine warfare, arrives on station at 12,000 feet and immediately begins its first pass to assess the search area. The crew has 3 tools available, and they are going to use 2 of them in sequence, each designed to cover the blind spot of the other. I spent time going through open source doctrine on how the US Navy approaches exactly this scenario. A silent diesel boat in shallow, acoustically cluttered water. And one detail kept standing out. The kill chain here doesn't start with a detection. It starts with a hypothesis. The P-8A crew already knows the probable track. They know the pipeline junction. They know the Kilo's last confirmed position from satellite imagery taken 6 hours earlier when it was still snorkeling. What they are doing now is not searching. They are solving for where it has to be, given its endurance, its speed envelope, and its objective. That narrows the search box from hundreds of square miles to something closer to 20. The first tool goes in, DIFAR sonobuoys, directional frequency analysis and recording buoys. Each one is a cylinder dropped from altitude, deploys a hydrophone array at depth, and transmits in real time on a dedicated radio frequency back to the aircraft. The P-8A drops 12 of them in a deliberate geometric pattern, not scattered randomly, but placed to triangulate any acoustic contact from 3 or more angles simultaneously. Here's the mechanism, and this is important. A single sonobuoy tells you there's a sound. 2 sonobuoys give you a bearing cross. 3 or more give you a position fix, updated in real time as the contact moves. The field doesn't search. It listens everywhere at once, and the geometry converts ambiguity into a specific coordinate. It turns an area into a cage. Think of it as stringing tripwires across a room in the dark, then waiting for something to brush one. The problem, and this is the honest, sober note, is that the Baltic's noise floor is doing exactly what the Kilo expected. The buoy field is picking up ferry tonals, trawler cavitation, distant commercial shipping. The acoustic picture is cluttered. The P-8A's sensor operator is building a filter, subtracting known traffic, looking for a residual. It is painstaking work, and it is not fast. 3 of the buoys return interesting data. Very faint, low-frequency tonals in the 15 to 20 hertz range that don't match any surface vessel on the track plot. It could be the Kilo's battery cooling fans at minimum speed. Or it could be nothing. Put yourself in the sensor operator's position for a moment. You have a probable contact on 3 buoys. The signal-to-noise ratio is just above threshold. You could call it, or you could wait for the second tool. The crew makes the right call. They wait, and they bring in the second tool. The P-8A descends. 12,000 feet becomes 5,000, then 2,000. Then the aircraft levels at 200 feet above the sea surface. Low enough that the crew can see whitecaps clearly out the windows. Low enough that the MAD boom extending from the tail of the aircraft is close enough to the water to do its job. MAD, magnetic anomaly detection. And this is where the physics become decisive. A steel submarine hull displacing roughly 3,000 tons of metal doesn't just occupy space in the water. It distorts the Earth's magnetic field. The planet's magnetic field lines, which normally run in smooth curves from pole to pole, get bent when they pass through a large ferrous mass. The distortion is measurable, it is unambiguous, and here's the crucial point. It is completely independent of how quiet the submarine is. You can fake sound, you can run silent, coat your hull in anechoic tiles, mount your machinery on vibration-dampened rafts, run on batteries instead of diesel. The Kilo does all of this. None of it matters for MAD. You cannot fake magnetism. A steel hull is a steel hull. It bends the field the same whether it's at full power or completely stopped. The common assumption is that magnetic detection is some crude old technology, a legacy Cold War system that modern submarines have solved. The evidence says otherwise. The MAD boom on the P-8A is a modern fluxgate magnetometer capable of detecting the magnetic dimple of a submarine hull at the aircraft's operational altitude. In shallow water, where the hull is closer to the surface, the signal is actually stronger. The Baltic, the environment the Kilo chose because its hard bottom defeats acoustics, is near ideal for MAD precisely because the boat cannot go deep. At 90 meters maximum depth, a Kilo running at periscope depth or mid-water is never more than 60 or 70 meters below the surface. The P-8A runs its MAD track at 200 feet on a precise pre-calculated course that sweeps the highest probability search box. The sensor operator watches the magnetometer readout. Background field. Background. Background. There. A deviation. Small, but clean. Not noise. Noise is random. This has a shape. A positive anomaly leading into a negative anomaly. The classic magnetic signature of a ferrous hull passing through a sensor's detection cone. The shape matches a submarine. The position is 40 meters below the surface, on a bearing consistent with the acoustic tentative contact from buoys 3, 7, and 9. The Kilo's commander does not know any of this. He is still at 2 knots, battery quiet, 4 kilometers from his objective. Here's the question worth sitting with. The Kilo executed its doctrine correctly. It chose the right environment. It ran the right profile. Its acoustic signature was genuinely below threshold for most of that buoy field's capability. And it still got found. Why? Because acoustic and magnetic detection are not rivals competing for the same job. They cover each other's blind spots. The hard bottom that defeats passive sonar is the same shallow water that brings the hull close to the surface for MAD. The battery quiet that masks the acoustic signature does nothing about the magnetic mass. The Kilo designed its stealth around the sensor that would be used against it in open water. In shallow water, it optimized for the wrong threat. What's most surprising about this scenario isn't that the P-8A found the submarine. It's how fast the detection went from tentative to certain once both sensors were working together. The acoustic ambiguity, those borderline tonals on 3 buoys, becomes a confirmed contact the moment MAD puts a position fix on the same coordinate. Neither sensor has to be definitive on its own. Together, they are. The kill chain is now 3 links long, sonobuoy field to P-8A to weapon. The crew sends the contact report on link 16 data link, encrypted, automatic, reaching every NATO asset in the operational picture within seconds. A second P-8A is airborne out of Ramstein. A Danish frigate to the north gets the datum, and the original aircraft now faces its next decision. Here's the part that doesn't sit comfortably, even from a doctrine standpoint. The Kilo has not done anything yet. It is approaching a pipeline. It has not deployed any weapon, has not damaged anything. Under the rules of engagement that would govern a peacetime gray zone operation like this one, that matters. The response cannot be a MiG-54 torpedo run. Not yet. The response is something more carefully calculated, and in some ways, more unsettling for the crew below. The P-8A descends further, 150 feet. The crew arms an active sonobuoy, not a passive listener this time, but a pinger. A device that transmits its own acoustic pulse into the water and listens for the return. When you drop an active buoy directly over a confirmed MAD contact, you are not searching anymore. You are announcing. The active buoy goes in. And in the water below, the Kilo's passive sonar array lights up with a sound it has not heard for the last 90 minutes. A clean, strong, close-range active ping. Not from a surface ship, from directly above. Think about what that means to the crew of that submarine for a moment. They have been running silent, confident in their acoustic camouflage, closing on their objective. And then a ping arrives from overhead so close and so strong, it has to be within a few hundred meters. Their sonar operator computes the bearing instantly. There is an aircraft directly above them. The aircraft has been there long enough to drop an active buoy on their exact position. They were not detected in the last 30 seconds. They were tracked. For how long, the commander does not know. That uncertainty is the point. I'll say this plainly. In gray zone operations below the threshold of open conflict, the knock, being demonstrated to with certainty that you've been found, held, and could be engaged, is often a more effective deterrent than a kinetic strike would be. A strike removes one asset. A demonstrated capability to track and hold before the asset knows it's being tracked changes doctrine, changes patrol patterns, changes the risk calculus for every future mission. The Kilo's commander has approximately 20 seconds to process this. The MiG-54 lightweight torpedo is a real weapon. It weighs 608 pounds, guides acoustically, and is designed specifically for shallow water engagements against diesel-electric submarines. The P-8A carries them. In a hot war scenario, the weapon would be in the water within 90 seconds of a confirmed contact, and the Kilo's battery endurance, 4 hours, 8 nautical miles maximum, means there is nowhere to run that the sonobuoy field doesn't already cover. The cage math is simple: 12 buoys, each with a detection radius, positioned to overlap. The Kilo's speed on battery cannot open the range faster than the P-8A can reposition the cage. In this scenario, the P-8A drops an exercise shot, a MiG-54 configuration without a live warhead, but with full guidance enabled. It runs its acquisition spiral. The torpedo's seeker head pings. The Kilo hears it. The torpedo passes 40 meters to starboard, close enough that the hull creaks from the pressure wave. The message doesn't require a diplomatic channel or an official protest. It requires the Kilo's commander to make one calculation. They know exactly where I am. They have had me long enough to place an active buoy directly overhead. They have a weapon in the water right now that could have been live, and they chose not to make it live. This time, the submarine begins a slow turn, increases to 4 knots. The snorkel comes up, and the moment it does, 2 of the passive buoys in the field light up with fresh tonals. The acoustic signature is recorded: frequency analysis, blade rate count, machinery harmonics. The Navy now has a library entry for this specific boat. Its individual acoustic fingerprint, the way a particular hull and a particular set of propulsion machinery sounds under load at 4 knots. That fingerprint will be used to track this boat the next time it leaves port. One detail that stuck with me going through the open doctrine on this: the acoustic signature recorded during a coerced withdrawal is often more valuable than what you'd get from a cooperative surveillance contact, because the boat is running at an atypical speed profile under stress, which reveals machinery characteristics it would normally suppress. The withdrawal itself becomes the intelligence collection event. The Kilo surfaces 14 nautical miles from the pipeline junction. Its mission is over. Its commander files an incident report that will be carefully worded to say nothing about what actually happened below the surface. Officially, a routine patrol was concluded early due to mechanical concerns. What this tells us about the current state of undersea competition is worth sitting with. The Kilo class is not an obsolete boat. It represents a genuine capability that smaller NATO navies have real difficulty tracking. The scenario worked because a P-8A Poseidon was available, had a datum, and was operating in coordination with an existing sensor network. Strip any one of those elements. No datum, no coordination, weather degrading the MAD run altitude, and the math changes. The hard, bottom, and ferry traffic that almost defeated the acoustic detection remain a real operational problem. This is not a story about a perfect system. It's a story about a system that barely had enough margin. Here's the final point, and it's the one that matters for everything that comes after. Anti-submarine warfare doctrines spent decades treating acoustic and magnetic detection as separate disciplines. Different aircraft, different crews, different training pipelines. The P-8A integration matters precisely because it runs both on the same platform, with a crew trained to use each to cue the other. When the acoustic picture is ambiguous, MAD resolves it. When MAD needs a search box, the acoustic field provides it. Neither sensor needs to be perfect. Together, they're decisive. The cost asymmetry is worth noting. A 12-buoy pattern costs roughly $360,000 to deploy. The Kilo-class submarine costs approximately $300 million to build and requires a trained crew of 52. In gray zone competition, spending $350,000 to hold a $300 million asset and record its acoustic signature is not a cost. It's an investment. Every time that boat goes to sea, NATO knows what it sounds like. The shallow, noisy, hard-bottomed water the Kilo chose as its cover was the right choice against one sensor. It was the wrong choice against two. And the P-8A always brings both. Will the next generation of diesel-electric submarine close this gap? Degaussing systems, advanced hull coatings, non-ferrous construction materials? Comment YES if you think magnetic detection's days are numbered, or no if you think physics still wins. We read every one. The Baltic does not forgive slow thinking. The Kilo chose its environment carefully, ran its doctrine well, and still came home without achieving its objective. Its signature in a database, a torpedo wake 40 meters to starboard as a parting memory. Against a P-8A working the problem correctly, the submarine's best camouflage became the thing that sealed its cage. The water was too shallow to hide the magnet. The noise floor was too high to mask the acoustics completely. And 4 hours of battery was never going to be enough once the aircraft had a datum. Next, we're looking at what happens when the Hunter doesn't have a datum. When a Yasin-M-class submarine goes deep in the North Atlantic and the acoustic picture offers nothing. That's a different problem, and the answer might surprise you. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and drop a comment. Which system in this breakdown surprised you most?